Thank you very much. So let me start again. I am Rhonda Kaiser. I am chair of the Brooklyn Solid Waste Advisory Board, aka the BkSWAB. We're a volunteer citizens advisory board. We're all appointed by the borough president, and we're dedicated to helping the borough of Brooklyn contribute to New York City-wide zero waste goals through policy and implementation. We care about how waste issues affect our borough, and we work towards increasing community engagement to transform New York City into a place where material recovery is part of our culture. We also advise the borough president and city and state officials on policies and programs regarding New York City's waste prevention, reuse, and recycling. So everyone's welcome to join our meetings. They're held the first Monday of every month, and now they're hybrid. They're via Zoom, and they're all at 6:30 p.m., or you can join us at Brooklyn Borough Hall. It's a beautiful conference room. We are in awe of how much information exists here tonight in our panelists and moderator, and I hope we'll all be able to get the information that we need to make this program a success. And with that, I would like to introduce our moderator for this evening, Clare Miflin. Clare is a circular systems thinker with over 20 years experience as an architect. In 2017, she led the development of zero waste design guidelines to show how design of the urban environment plays a crucial role in achieving zero waste. She leads the nonprofit Center for Zero Waste Design and the consultancy Think Woven. Thank you very much, Clare, for joining us.
Thank you, Rhonda. So yes, to get started here, you can see our panelists. We have a very well-rounded panel here that hopefully will answer all your questions. And the goal of this event is really to explain how to successfully set your building up to participate in the Department of Sanitation's Curbside Composting program. And that's from training maintenance staff to setting up bins to engaging and communicating with residents. Just a little bit on the definitions. Organic waste is really any type of food waste, but also yard waste, food, soil, paper, and compostable plastics. DSNY used to call the brown bin program organics collection. Now they call it curbside composting, which is in line with some other cities, but it's not actually a true use of the word composting because it's really a collection program. And then some of the materials are composted, others go to anaerobic digestion at wastewater treatment plants. But that could all change in the future. You know, the city is studying the best use for our food scraps. And what we're talking about now is the collection side of things. Community composting is happening still in the city from food scrap drop-offs, and their food scraps are made into compost. And you can learn more about that from our previous panel. Here's just an illustration of what organic waste is. And you can find more about this on the sanitation website. But this previous panel has been recorded. There's a 15-minute summary. You can download the slides all from that link there. Or if you're handy with your phone, you can scan the code and we'll put it in the chat. So why should we separate food scraps? I mean, there's so many reasons to do this, from reducing rats, having a cleaner building, things being less smelly, but also most importantly, food scraps that go to landfill create methane, and that's a really bad climate change inducing gas. So really the best thing to do is not send food scraps to landfill, and that's something that New York City are now making available to all New Yorkers, so we're really happy about that. And sorry that Sandy Nurse couldn't be here to introduce, because her bill really made that mandatory, and it's already mandatory. So I'm now going to move straight on to our panelists, because I realize time is going to fly tonight. So starting with Jackie Ottman. She's a green marketing and zero waste expert. She's the immediate past chair of MSWAB, where she led the development of multifamily building guides, which help show how to engage residents in recycling, reuse, and food scrap collection. So over to Jackie. We're going to have all the panelists give a short presentation, and then we're going to get into a panel discussion, then we'll open to audience questions. So go ahead.
Thank you, Claire, and thanks to the Brooklyn SWAB for hosting this event tonight. It is so exciting to finally see organics become mandatory in New York City. Claire, can I have the next slide, please? The visuals that I'm going to show you now and many more are contained in this guide, which Claire just mentioned, which I spearheaded while on the Manhattan Solid Waste Advisory Board. Please check it out. It's free. It's easy to download at the link you see here. And that link is going to be included in the resources that you're going to be receiving. Next slide, please. We wrote the guide to address the many, many specific challenges of engaging residents in multifamily buildings. Just a few of them are, like Claire said, fear of attracting rodents and flies in your kitchen, also space and odor issues. New York City kitchens are notoriously small, not so well ventilated, and also many residents of multifamily buildings have caregivers and housekeepers who don't speak English, much less familiar with New York City laws and even understanding what composting is. So if we want to get residents on board, we not only have to educate them about the benefits, but we have to help them figure out the best way to collect their scraps. Slide, please. So I have two pieces of advice on this, and they both come from my building where we kicked off voluntary organics 7 years ago. The first is to have a kickoff event. You have, one chance in life to make a good impression. So why not have an event and get everybody off to a good start in your building and begin what is going to be a long-term process of culture change. This is a long-term process of culture change in the city and within our buildings. So what we did in my building is we made it easy for residents to simply drop in to this lobby event that we had at their own convenience over the span of several hours. There they got a demonstration of how the bin works. They could pick up a pail with some of these green bags. We got even little brown sandwich bags of free compost from the folks at Earth Matter. I realize DSNY is making arrangements for that as well, and they could get their questions answered. So I think it really helped us, set the right positive tone and answer a lot of questions. Next slide. And then the second is make it as easy as possible. So this is the sign that's in our chutes now, our chute room, asking people, reminding them not to put the food scraps in the chute and to simply take them downstairs to the brown bin and show them under what circumstances they can drop things into the bin. I personally don't use a pail or the green bags, though it's a good practice to start. And if you can afford to get these bags for your building, it certainly also sets things off on the right tone. I simply divide my trash can, my existing trash can, into two sections. One, a plastic bag for the conventional trash, and a brown paper bag that I drop in right next to it for the scraps. The best thing you can do from a consumer behavior standpoint is to simply not ask people to do anything that they're already, they're not already doing. And so if people are going to scrape the scraps into the trash, this allows them to continue to do that. So we just have a few minutes each, so I'm going to end there, and I'll be happy to take questions later.
Thank you so much, Jackie. Next, we have Michaela Boren, who's the manager of green programs at Thomas Shortman Training Fund. They provide free training to 32 BJ Building Service Union members, and she manages more than 25 courses, teaching the Green Associate Lead course, working with property managers and building operators to create new courses that give 32 BJ members the tools and training they need to meet all the green-related challenges and grow in a quickly changing building industry. Thank you for joining us, Michaela.
Hello, everyone. Good evening. This is really, really exciting. So just a little bit of background. I'm from 32BJ Training Fund, and what that means is if you think of your supers, your handy persons, your door persons, your concierge, your porters, they could be part of a union, and that union is 32BJ. It's the largest union on the East Coast. And the union works with building owners, with building management employers, and they, have benefits, right? Think of your health benefits, your dental benefits, and training is one of those benefits. So next slide, please. Sorry. And if you are a building owner or employer, if you know that your building is 32BJ union, we are here and we can help you train your union members for free because it might be part of your contract. And for those of you who are building service employees and you know your 32BJ, definitely check with us because you might have free training benefits, right? And if you scan that QR code, that would give you more than 250 courses that we offer for free to our union members. So specifically about tonight, next slide, please. There are a few key things that I really wanted to share. And the first is it's very important to educate everybody in the building, your building staff and your residents, because you want to make sure that everybody starts off on the same page and kind of is able to think ahead and prepare for things. And DSNY has training, Big Reuse has training. You're going to hear from Sarah later. And again, we also have training for you, and we can do it at your building, at one of our locations. We have a location in Brooklyn. We can do it remotely. And, one of the things about our training is that you have the opportunity to talk to other building operators and get ideas and share ideas. And remember, it's not just educating at the beginning. If you've been doing composting in your building, previously, or maybe the past 3 or 6 months already, it doesn't hurt to do a refresher, right? It doesn't hurt to do a review or to do a check-in with everybody in your building. The other thing is to have clear and large signs. Where the motto that my building operators really share is have the signs where a visitor wouldn't even need to ask where your compost bin is located. So consider the font of the sign or label, consider the lighting in the area if it's too dark. And like Jackie said, definitely have a trash only sign on the chute, and make it fun, have freebies, right? If you DSNY has signs that you can order for free. Big Reuse, I believe, also has it, that Sarah's going to share. If you don't want to order from DSNY and you happen to be at the 32BJ headquarters building here on 18th Street, we actually have the same decals and signs from DSNY that you can just grab one, grab two, whatever you need for your building. And we have the bookmarks and coloring books as well. And these freebies you can also use as fun activities in your building. So as building staff, you are in a position and definitely work with your management company or your property manager or your board, and a lot of this I got from Jackie as well. Do a pizza party, but this time you can practice throwing pizza crust into the bin, right? Add that twist to it. You can even have a meet you at the compost bin event. So here in the office and in certain events, and this is how the first time I learned about composting with DSNY was somebody was literally right beside the bin helping people or guide people throw whatever they needed to throw in the different bins. So it's not really, policing, but it's guiding people. And if you have that fun vibe and say, hey, this is new, we learned something, and we just want to help you figure this out and make it easier for everybody for a smooth transition. So if you put it in that point of view, or if that's the message that you're giving, it would have more, a positive openness to it. Do a bingo game, maybe before you do a kickoff party. See how well your building knows about compost, where you have items on a sheet of paper and you can ask your tenants to fill out if the item goes in the green, blue, or brown bin. All right. You can do a Kahoots game, which is people can answer on their cell phone, and definitely partner with Big Reuse. Like they have a lot of, they've done this. They know how to do this. They work with you, and the RO condominium actually just worked with them recently this past week, and based on my building operator's feedback, who is a 32 BJ member and green instructor for us, that it was really a smooth coordination on his end. So and other than that, if you have different all three bins on every floor, why don't you do a best cleanest floor award, right, where you do positive reinforcement? So and if let's say in 6 months or 12 months your building is doing really well, then also do a celebratory event, because it's showing everybody in the building that, hey, we're getting somewhere. So I think that's for me. All right.
Thank you so much, Michaela. That was great. Now we have Sarah Woodruff. She's project manager for the Curbside Composting Outreach team at Big Reuse. They work with the Department of Sanitation to provide educational outreach on the Curbside Composting program. That includes from tabling at community events, presentations, to high-rise outreach and door-to-door canvassing. Thank you, Sarah.
Sure, happy to be here. If you want to switch to the next slide, I can just do a quick intro of our team. So we're really a community resource. We're trying to get out there as much as possible to talk to people at events, and also high rises. Let us do the kind of hard work in educating your building. It's what we're here for. And we have a lot of experience with it, as Michaela mentioned. And I think, we learn a little bit from every setup is so different. Every neighborhood is so different. So we kind of have a cumulative knowledge. Every time we go somewhere, we learn something else. We also have a bunch of different language speakers on the team. So depending on the residents in your building, if you let us know in advance, if you're working with us for an outreach event, we can bring translated materials. We can try to have a speaker there. You can go to the next slide. So the way that we kind of offer educational outreach to high rises, it's what we consider high rises in our line of work is just a 10+ unit building. We did have a separate outreach strategy for 1 to 9 unit buildings, where we went door to door canvassing, rang all the buzzers, tried to talk to as many people in the building as possible. But as you all know, it's a totally different ballgame with a huge high rise and a lot of different tenants. So we found it to be most effective to be able to work with high rise building staff and set up a table in their building lobby. We bring, what you can see in those photos are 1-gallon kitchen containers that help people collect food scraps in their own apartments before transferring it to the communal bin. We give out a lot of different materials, educational materials. We can bring some of those bigger posters that Michaela mentioned, and we're really there as a resource to answer questions, share some of our knowledge that we've seen from other buildings. And we can also do, depending on the situation, we can do virtual presentation as well. We have done a couple of those with high-rise buildings. We also, if you want to switch to the next slide, have a we're able to adapt to your specific building. So we can set up the table outside, we could set up a table inside, we can use an existing table that you have. We're pretty flexible with all of the different setups, and we can also speak to co-op boards. Some more unique situation we've done is with some building management that were a little reluctant. We've worked with them to set up a table in their building and kind of took down names of all interested residents, just kind of demonstrated the support for the program in the building, and just kind of, I think, being there and seeing it and having us go through the process, it makes it seem a little less, it's more tangible. I think it makes feel easier for people. There's a lot of reluctance sometimes around, is it more work? It's the same amount of material, you're just putting it in a different bin. Is it going to smell? All this kind of stuff. And we have a lot of different explanations or resources that kind of explain more of this and give people the resources that they need to make that happen for them in their building. If you want to switch to the next slide. So the way that you can request one of these in your building is through the DSNY event request form that you see there. You can also always email our team directly, especially if you have very specific questions or very specific situations. If you're a building manager that has multiple buildings in Brooklyn, if their buildings are close together, we could do events at the same time. We just did one last night where we, with 3 different buildings in the same area, we set up, we moved our table from building to building over a couple hour period. We've also done it before where we just do one table in a central spot that people come through. You can see the kitchen containers there on the left. We also have leaf bags and 1 pound bags of compost that we often give out. Those 2 items we typically give out at community events. So you might also see my team out and about in street festivals and harvest festivals and all sorts of stuff. And then for the 1 to 9 unit buildings, we want you to have resources as well. And so we also give away the kitchen containers and informational materials at Big Reuse every Thursday from 3 to 6 p.m. Except for next week, which will be on Wednesday, the 18th, but otherwise through November, it'll be every Thursday. You can come pick up whatever you need. I think that's a great way to kind of, especially if you're in a smaller building, get some of your neighbors on board, offer to get them a bin. We can give them materials and really just try to figure out the best way to make this easy for everyone. If you want to go to the next slide. And then a big reminder that the last day to get your free brown bin from the city is tomorrow. Fill out the online form at nyc.gov/curbside composting. Anyone in the building can do this, any tenants or supers. And then it will be delivered. If you miss that window, you can also check out that website. There's a list of free brown bin giveaways that are happening from mid-October through mid-November. And then there's also on that website tons of downloadable materials, resources. You can also order resources. If you're using your own bin, you just want to make sure that it has a secure lid. Doesn't have to have a latching, like locking lid, but just a secure lid and a decal on it, which you can get for free at that website. There's also at nyc.gov/getcompost, you can get some finished compost 40-pound bags. There's, I think, 5 events left over the next couple of weeks. So check that out as well. And then I think one other question that we get is about kind of the tenant role versus the super role and who gets the building on board, especially for high rises. And, the situation is really that there's no opt-in, you don't have to sign up, no one has to register a building. So it's more like who in the building is taking the responsibility for this. And sometimes it does take some of the tenants to kind of push their building managers and say, we want this and we want to make sure this is happening. So you can definitely talk to your super about this building manager. We have we'll send this link out to everyone at the end, but my team has put together a folder for high rises for recommendations for talking points to how to have that conversation with your building manager, some materials that you can share with them. And then there's also some different like petition forms if you want to circulate, get signatures in your building, show them that there's interest. Another suggestion that we have is that you can volunteer to be the one responsible for moving that bin out and bringing it back every after the recycling day after it's picked up. Of course, there's its own set of challenges with that. I think that works really well with buildings less than 50 units, but you don't want to take on 1 person or 2 people for a huge, huge building. But that is an option that you can talk to your building manager and see if they're willing to do that. And then maybe once they kind of see you do it and see residents using it, maybe they'll be willing to, add that back onto their repertoire. I think that's it for me.
Thank you so much. There was loads of info there. And we'll put all those links in the chat so everybody can get them. And then our 4th panelist here is Bylent Abazi. He's the superintendent for a building in Kensington, Brooklyn, with just over 100 units. He's been a super for 5 years now and has successfully set up and maintained brown bins in his building for over 3 years now, because they were in one of the neighborhoods that got the collection earlier. So, Bylent, over to you. Thank you for joining us.
All right, you're welcome. Thank you for having me. So we've been doing the recycled bin and the compost bins for little bit over 3 years. And during COVID time, they stopped it, but we got back to it. And luckily, we have about 8 bins, and we do rotate them in our trash room. We have a designated trash room for all our recyclables, plastic, paper, compost, and regular garbage. So we keep them all in one room, and we have everything labeled, pretty much all the trash cans, and we have labels on the walls. But we still have some work to do. We have a few advocates in the building that they love to educate our tenants. And this is some of our slides that we have. The one on the right side is where we take them out. And we have one of the advocates that put all these signs on the door, on the trash room door. And we try to keep it as clean as possible, but we still have some work to do, like I said before. So not everybody's educated. And one of the things that I never mentioned before, I just realized the other day that because this is, me going in the trash room pretty much like 3-4 times a day. And I do the trash on Sundays because my porter is his day off. And I see a lot of kids that are taking the garbage, and not a lot of kids are educated on the how to recycle or any of that. They just go and find it, whichever bin it's open, and they just dump it in the bin. Next slide, please.
Oh,
Yeah, this
that
is
was the end of
yeah.
your slides. I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah, that's okay. And one of the things that I was talking about it before is that we have had some issue with sanitation where they don't pick up our bins because they are too heavy. And if you look at I have contacted 311, and I got a hold of a superintendent of the DSNY, and he came to my building, and we were talking about why are they picking up the bins. He says they are too heavy. Our trucks don't have arms, and it's only one guy. And I said, well, listen, our bins are 3 1/4 full. It's not full all the way 100%. And we have a 22 gallons bins, and sometimes they have a problem picking those up because, as we know, our trucks are not that top of the line, and they don't have the arm to pick up the bin, and we got to have a guy that's going to pick it up with his fellow worker. But I heard that there's trying to roll out or letting the buildings choose their own containers for compost, and they said you can pick a compost bin up to 55 gallons. I just want to make sure that everybody understands that you're going to have a problem with that, because then you're going to have a problem with the super, then you're going to have a problem with the porter if you have one in the building, because if they don't pick it up because it's too heavy, then they got to go back to emptying that trash can, 55-gallon bin, and now they got to separate it in 3-4 different bags because they're not going to pick it up, and they got to double the bags, and you're just going to make your good porter that you have and a good super that you have, you're just going to make them even more mad because we want to recycle and be 100% on this program. And that's going to be really difficult.
That's a great point, Bylent. And I think I just popped this slide up because I know Sarah and BkSWAB were looking at kind of bins. They don't recommend anything above 35 gallons, even though Department of Sanitation says it can be up to 50 gallons. These ones are more like 24 gallons. I mean, it would be great that one of these is brown. It's great to not have a green one so people don't get confused with paper and cardboard. But I'm going to jump to Sarah here because I think she's probably got the most experience. What would you advise buildings who need extra bins above the one they get from DSNY?
Yeah, I think it really depends on the building situation to a certain extent. Whether they're planning to put a bin on every floor, then they would probably want those bins to be smaller. And then, or if there's one communal space, they probably want a larger bin for that area. I think the fact that you're also lining the bin makes it a little easier for the sanitation worker. They don't have to pick up the whole bin or try to dump it over. But I mean, the brown bins that Department of Sanitation give out are 13 and 21. So I think that's a good gauge of just a size that they've found to be effective, that seems to fit in people's homes. So I think it really is kind of dependent on the building itself and the whole setup and how many residents, how many people are actively participating. I think that, you know, middle ground is safe. I think 55 gallons, even just as like a person, a porter, whoever in the building, could be tough for the building themselves to maintain. So I think it's nice to be able to have that option to have 2 smaller bins rather than 1 huge bin.
Yeah, I would only
Absolutely.
recommend that 55 gallons if it's for yard waste, like leaves and stuff
Yeah.
that are weight. And just I wanted to note, because it's kind of breaking news, yesterday there was a press release from DSNY. They are going to look at providing bins in future years, standard bins that buildings can buy. And actually for organics, it's set up to 25 gallons. Although they are also looking at adding mechanical hoists on trucks as well. So yeah, we have some resources about bins that are going to be shared. And I just put these slides from my work to just show a few buildings and where bins are located. They may be in a central location. This is a 169 unit co-op. This is in the garage. They put newspapers and odor filters to make it easier for people. Other central locations, Stuytown, have them right by their laundry rooms. And then many rooms, buildings where they're put in the waste room on every floor. Supers are often reluctant to do that, thinking it'll bring pests. And yes, it could bring smells if it's not ventilated, but if it's managed well, I've seen it be very successful in many buildings. So I think from that, I'm going to just ask Michaela next. I mean, what do you think in terms of how do you convince staff or supers? Does it take more time and work? How do you approach that question? Oh, sorry, you're muted, Michaela.
All right. So first, does it require more time and work for our building operators? Not necessarily if it's done right. And I'm not, this is not considering the concerns that people have been bringing up in the chat about DSNY not collecting their trash, right? This is separate from that. This is just, you know, the process in the building. With this new composting, you have a cleaner building and a cleaner chute. Right, it means it's less messy. And remember that your organics have the most water content out of all your, you know, waste, which also makes it less smelly. So, you know, with that, there's less staff time needed to maintain and less complaints of bad odor. And remember that talking about rats or pests need food, water, and shelter to thrive. So if you are if you are separating your food and the rest of the waste, right? It's not smelly, it's not mixed. You're removing 2 out of the 3 factors. And if your building operator can seal holes in the walls, and that removes the 3rd factor of shelter for pests. So the science is there and it can be done. And I think what I really wanted to point out with this is that you have the same waste as you did before. Now you're just separating it, right? And with the building operator side, what normally is the concern is that you have, you know, if it's really heavy, everybody has experienced carrying a 50-pound luggage, right? Think of a 55-pound luggage that you have to carry. And this is what our building operators have to go through when they carry a very, very large bag of trash. So if you separate it, it actually means the weight of the weight that our building operators are carrying is lighter. It means it's easier to carry, and our building staff will have less accidents or body aches and pains, which is one of the main health issues that our building operators face. So again, if it's done right, then it can really work, and it's, you know, easier for everybody, especially for our building operators. Now, how can you convince residents and management that the bin won't attract rats and roaches? So for those very tips alone of what you can do, makes sense. And they're doing composting in schools. It's not new, right? And there's many ways to do it. So I would say first face it with a positive attitude. You don't want to tell people, well, it's the law from the very beginning, and then that kind of gives it a negative vibe. And plan it out, like, visualize it, put in a proposal, share it with, your board, or if you have a sustainability champion in your building, get their support for it and present it to your management company and whatnot. So or vice versa. So I think if you have a plan, if you have, as um, I shared today with all these best practices, and leverage the people in the building that already are doing it, or if you have kids in the building that are doing composting in school, then sometimes they are your biggest supporters because they already know how to do it. So I think those are the steps that we normally share in our training to convince. Mhm.
Thank you. And then I'll go to Bylent, because you are a super. How would you respond to that when building supers tell residents it's going to be more work, we don't have space? I mean, what advice would you give? And also,
Well,
if you could talk a little bit about how you ramped up, like, did it start with fewer bins and then get to more?
Well, it started with us. We used to have the chutes on every floor, which my building, it's I have a 6-floor building, but it's separated into two. So I have about 51 apartments on one left side, 50 apartments on the right side. So, and you can't cross from one side to the other. So you have to come down to the lobby to go to the other side. So we have two compact rooms. And with recent infestation that we had, and we had to shut them down because of the infestation and just being an older building, and we took care of that problem. But right now we have, that's why we designated one room for everybody to go into the room and dump their garbage. But like I said before, it's like it all comes with the neighbor caring for the building and the neighbor caring for the next person. Because as a super, when I have to go into the garbage and sometimes I pick up paper, I'm thinking everything is paper, but then you go into the paper and you see a diaper in there, or you see plastic, or you see regular trash, or you see somebody's like, you know, insulin needles and whatnot. And it's just that, how do you educate that? You can put all the signs in the world. If you don't have your neighbors taking care of one another, then it's going to be really tough. It's going to be really hard to do that. And luckily we haven't had any incidents with myself and my porter, but it's just something that eventually it might happen. But when is it going to happen? I don't know. I hope never happens. But it's just, and with the chutes that we had before, we used to have the signs on the door. We had the signs inside the chute. Please take the garbage, plastic downstairs, take boxes downstairs. And again, somebody took a 48-inch blind, which it's a 24-inch chute, but they managed to put a 48-inch blind inside of it. You can't fix that with a sign, and you can't catch everybody. You can't penalize anybody. I worked in automotive industry for many years, and I used to have a sign in my office: duct tape fixes everything, but it cannot fix common sense. If you don't have common sense that I can't, nobody can fix that. It just takes with everybody taking initiative, and I guess everybody should be informed at the same time. It's just, when we see it, we try to educate them. We tell them this is how it works, and we have some old timers that tell us, this is how I've been doing it for years, and you can't tell me how to do it. I'm not here to fight with people. I'm here to make it better, so we don't have a cockroach issue, or we don't have a bug issue or mice issue. But hopefully one day everybody will learn, but it's going to be really tough.
Yeah, so that's interesting. So you shut down the chutes at the same time and put everything in one room, and that's when you started compost collection. So everybody had brought stuff down. And I think you said someone was asking questions about the number of bins for a 150-unit building. I mean, you have 6 bins, you said about, right?
I have in the room right now, I have 4 blue bins for plastic and metal. I have 4 green bins for paper. I have 4 gray bins for regular garbage with lids. The other ones are no lids. And I have 2 compost bins that we rotate as much as they get filled. So if they
Yeah.
get filled, but luckily I got them early on when we started the program. We got 8 bins, so I have 8 bins. So not all 8 of them get filled in a week. Usually I have 6, 5 to 6. Mostly I have seen it's 7, but I have 8 bins and I keep them and we keep them clean. We keep them with a plastic bag inside of it. And we were told not to put the plastic bag, but then the sanitation a couple times told us you have to put a bag because we're not going to pick it up if it's not bagged. So it's like one person says this way, but the other one says that way. And I know you're not supposed to put a plastic bag because that's not compost. It's not good for that. But we put a plastic bag till we are
Yeah,
told
I
not
mean
to do it.
the rules now say you definitely can, and I
Yeah,
think that's a good segue to Jackie. I mean, we're
yeah.
giving tips about how to launch the collection, but how do you really make it part of your building's culture longer term and convince people?
Yeah, that's gonna. I mean, the only thing is, I guess we're gonna have to see if we can get on every floor or each side to have a champion. They're gonna manage that. Maybe we have because luckily in my building too, I have a building link which I can send an email to everybody in the building, and my co-op boards board members they can send an email and anybody can join from the building because they have a free account, email and password. They can send an email. So I guess we have to set up with the champions, go like, hey, listen, from Monday or Saturday, whatever day we pick, from 12 to 4, we're going to be downstairs by the compact room. If you don't know how to compost, you need help with it, I'll be more than happy to help you with that. If anybody wants to sign for that program to be one of the volunteers, and I guess that will be our next step to do so.
Yeah, it's really I'm loving what Bylent's saying because he's acknowledging that this is a long-term process. Just to underscore, the program is mandatory, but enforcement is not going to start, as I understand it, till 2025. And I think that's really in DSNY's wisdom that it takes a long time to establish, to get everybody on board and get your routine in and figure this out on a building to building basis and a culture to culture basis. So in terms of establishing, building this into your culture, there's a few suggestions. You want to reinforce the benefits over the long haul of, enhanced quality of life in your building, cleanliness, pest management, the benefits to the workers. Residents are very sensitive to, their favorite building workers, and nobody wants to see these guys get hurt. Another thing to do is to acknowledge the residents who are active in the program. At our annual meeting, I ask everybody who's, we've been doing this voluntarily now on the East Side, to raise their hands if they've been, active in the organics collection program in the building. And part of that is to say thank you to people and make them feel good. And the other part is to show everybody else whose hands aren't up how many people are actually doing this, and that this is something that we do in the building. Another thing that we have to remember about really any multifamily building, but particularly it seems like in New York, is how transient we really are as a population. So you want to make sure that you are constantly bringing along the new residents as they come in. So what we do, I'm on my co-op board, is when we do these Zoom interviews with our shareholders, I'm always holding up our bins to the shareholder interviews and letting people know that this is what we do here. We hope you'll be doing it too. And one of the first things you can do is go to the super and get yourself a free pail and the green bags. And you could do the same thing at any kind of a resident orientation once they get moved in. And another thing is, don't be afraid to enforce the program. I know a lot of my guys here and the people, I didn't mention this, but I used to train and residential and commercial recycling for the 32 BJ, working with Michaela, and the building workers are really afraid to enforce this. And so I say, you know, just jump right in there. People really do want to do the right thing. They don't realize their housekeeper, their caregiver, their children are not doing this properly. And it's a good investment to grab people when you have a teachable moment and point out very, you know, gently what the problem is, and pleased to see that people will try hard to correct for the future.
Yeah, all good points, definitely.
Thank you.
And I think moving to Sarah next, if you can just answer some questions. We have mostly residents in the webinar tonight. So what if you have an enthusiastic resident? I mean, what are the most common obstacles you hear from them? How would you recommend they move forward?
Sure. Yeah, I think one of the most common ones we get, especially from like if we're talking to building managers, is that, well, my tenants don't even recycle. So how are we going to start with this? And I think that there is a little more straightforwardness to this program. There's one bin, all those items, food scraps, food soiled paper, yard waste can all be mixed together. You're not thinking about plastic versus paper versus is it rigid plastic, etc. Any kind of food can go in there, even meat, bones, and dairy. So I think it's kind of what everyone has been saying. It's just an educational thing. Just put up a poster that shows what should go in there. People are in the habit of a lot of people's trash is food scraps, you know, 1/3 of all of the things that New Yorkers throw away. So just really thinking about it before you just dump it all in the same place, your wrapper and your food. Just have two. That's why the kitchen containers are great too, because you can have that little bin, a ready thing that helps you separate the stuff while you're actively in the kitchen, and then you don't have to think about it later. If you collect it separately, then you just take it down to your communal bin like you would if you were collecting paper separately or something. So I think it's more just a habit, developing a habit kind of thing. And then I think that I would also sort of similar to that, for just sort of the reluctance people are experiencing from other tenants or building managers, or the fact that it's just a warning period until 2025, is that to take advantage of the educational outreach and support that's happening now from, you know, my team is moving from borough to borough with each borough that gets service. So we spent the last year in Queens. We've been in Brooklyn for the past couple months. We'll probably be here, you know, through the end of the year at least. But then we're going to go on and we're going to help Bronx and Staten Island and Manhattan. And so, you know, you have this nice window of time where you have a team and you have all these DSNY resources and everyone's paying attention to this, to jump in early and take advantage of the fact that people are willing to come to your building and talk to you. And we're all kind of learning together. I think that's kind of fun too, to be involved this early on and trying to figure out things. And we don't know everything, you know, we want to, as you're talking to other people, you're going to learn tips from them. And so it feels like a more collective community effort rather than scrambling in 2025 when you feel like, oh, now I'm actually, you know, something, I have to do it. And then you're trying to train your residents and all this kind of stuff. So I think there's some of that to just remind your, you know, super other tenants, you know, take advantage of this stuff and let's figure it out. And once we figure it out, it'll become a routine.
Yeah, that's definitely true. And now I'm going to start taking some questions from the chat. So I was going to start with a few people who have had various frustrations. One person has kind of got their building on board, and then their pickup day was Mondays, and then it didn't happen because of Indigenous Peoples Day. Another person put out a small bin. It was labeled, but DSNY took the whole bin. What should residents do or buildings do if they have that kind of scenario? Who should they contact? Where's the outreach they should go to, Sarah?
So the best thing to do, and I think someone else put this in the chat, is contacting 311, either calling or filling out the online report. You can do it after 8 a.m. after 8 a.m. the day after your missed collection, and just do it repeatedly. If it happens 2 or 3 weeks in a row, they're looking at that data, especially if it's happening multiple times, it'll, raise a flag and someone will have to look into it. Also just double check that you're putting your material right on the curb, make sure there's nothing, construction or anything blocking it where it might accidentally be missed. Take a look at your block and see if other people are putting their bins out, if it looks like their material is being collected, because then it could just be, it was just not seen for some reason that week. If you're seeing the whole building or the whole block, maybe that whole block was missed by accident. There's a lot of new routes for sanitation workers. The service just started, so there is, a little bit of a grace period as people get used to this kind of stuff. But yeah, reporting through 311, because otherwise no one at DSNY will know there was an issue, and there are people looking at those reports, so that's the best thing to do.
Yeah, and for interruptions in collection because of holidays, you can always check 311 to see that as well, right?
Yeah, exactly. You can check the sanitation website. They usually put it all over social media and stuff like that as well.
Great. And then we have Sam, who asked, she tried bringing up the rollout with her super and was told we don't have to do that because we have 20 units. Her building has repeatedly reached out to the management company and they've not responded well to organics collection in the past. She filled out the request form for a brown bin but hasn't received one. I mean, what should somebody like that do, which is having that resistance with the management company, and maybe there was a brown bin delivered and something else happened to it?
Yeah, it's definitely a frustrating situation when that does happen, and that's great that you're being such a champion for it in your building and really trying to push it through, because we need people like that. I think in terms of the brown bin arriving, it depends on when you ordered it. It could take a couple of weeks, so it's possible that it hasn't yet arrived. One part of the program, the change in the program of being able to use your own bin is and the fact that there's no opt-in kind of puts things back into the power back into the hands of tenants, because if, the brown bin did arrive and your building manager stored it somewhere, you can use another bin, you can get, you can use any bin with it and put that sticker on top so that they can't use that as an excuse to say we don't have a brown bin to use. In any units, buildings with any number of units are participating. There's no kind of cap on that. So that 20 unit thing, that's incorrect. And I think that especially because you live in a smaller building, that could be a great situation where you try to volunteer too, if you're willing to take the brown bin in and out, and get that, help them to see, how easy it is and how many people are participating in the building. We could also do an outreach event there. So you could try putting us in touch with your building manager, and we could reach out and explain what we do and what we offer, because sometimes it could be intimidating of trying to add this to your roster and kind of putting some of the onus on us to show them how to do it and provide all of this stuff. And then take a look at our high-rise resources folder. We have a lot of talking points around some of these concerns about smells or rats and everything, and hopefully that will help you have that conversation.
Thank you. Do any of the other panelists want to respond to any of those questions or issues?
Yes, I do.
Go ahead, Bylent.
Yeah, one of the things about if you think your bin has been delivered and you're missing it, I would suggest that you label your bin like on the sides at the bottom with your address. You can just put your number of the building, because a few years ago we had some that were missing. And then after we were missing them, then I started labeling them, and found out that one of our neighbors took our bins because they wanted to participate, but they don't want to go through the DSNY and request the bins. So they just took one of our bins, and I found in our next door neighbors, and I took it back. So that can be the case where you're missing the bin. They might have been delivered, but somebody might have taken it because it was brand new, it was never used, and they just put it in their SUV and they take it. So that could have been the case. So
yeah. Anybody else? Jackie, Michaela?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a role here for property managers. I know when we started with the voluntary program here, the DSNY had to work with our property manager firm, which is First Service. So I would think that's a logical place to start if you're trying to, rather than even the super is because that's the super reports to the property manager and the landlord.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I also noticed in the chat that if you're not union, your building staff, you can also get training from DSMY, and there's a link for that in the chat. We have another kind of group of questions, like people that are worried, like they're in a 150 unit building. If you have one bin per 12 units, that's like 12 or more bins in the street. I mean, how would you respond to that? There's been some responses in the chat that participation grows over time. Should these buildings be worried about having to deal with too many bins and too much success? What do you think? Maybe you can take that to start with, Jackie, because you rolled out your building from scratch.
We have 100 units in our building, and my super tells me that only half of the people cook in the building. Even if you do takeout, though, you'll still have some kind of scraps and things to get rid of. But I don't think we've ever put out more than 2 bins on an evening. I think that the material, somehow squishes down. It's not as voluminous as empty bottles and cans. So I think worry later about the good problem of having too many bins, and just focus now on getting a couple of bins filled up on a weekly basis, because that's probably what you'll have in the beginning anyway.
And yeah, thanks. And Bylent, would you say in your building it took a while to ramp up, or it was full on pretty much from the beginning?
It was full on from the beginning.
Yeah,
It didn't take too long, but yeah, it was from the beginning.
that's interesting that people started pretty. Yeah, I mean, you don't want to not have enough bins for your people, so that's great. You have the 8 and you have the backup.
Yes.
There was another question about getting more bins. Currently, DSMY are only providing 1. We have that link for other possible bins, and you can get the free decals from DSMY website. Make sure you put them all over your bin. You can get the free signage.
There's also, just to jump in quick, there's also the brown bin giveaways that are going on from mid-October through mid-November. So you can check out the nyc.gov/curbside composting, sign up for a free registration for one of those bins as well, especially if you think your bin never arrived or is missing or something like that.
That's good. Good to remind people, and order that bin for free by tomorrow on the DSMY website. We have another set of questions that are really about setting up bins in your building. Like, if you have a trash chute, where should you put the bins to make them convenient? Any advice like that that you can share in terms of where to put the bins? I don't know, Michaela, you want to start with that one?
Sure. So, the basic one is, make sure it's in an accessible area that everybody has access to. And especially if you have tenants in your building that maybe can't do stairs, also consider that. If you have to open a door to get to the bins, make sure it's easy to operate or it's not too heavy. Because remember, normally we go down with many bags of trash already to throw it out, and our hands are full with carrying that. So to be able to like push the door in a way to get in there makes a big difference. Make sure that a wheelchair can access it if you do have that space. And when you do put your bins in a certain area, again, remember FDNY, please do not make sure it doesn't block egress, right? I'm very short, so tall bins don't really help me. So it does make a difference to make sure that you can easily reach where you need to throw your stuff into, because it encourages separation. If it's too much in the corner and you can't reach it, then people will end up just putting everything in the bin closest to what they can reach. Some of people have shared that you can keep the heaviest bags closest or heaviest bins closest to the door, that it might be easier to roll from there. And if you have, you know, the brown bin, make sure the other bins are there too, so that it's not just one or the other where they have to go to separate locations. Although we have had building operators share that it is successful for them to have the brown bin outside, and sometimes their tenants feel more comfortable with the brown bins having outside in the shade. And then again, the label and sign with good lighting is I guess those are the top things, and I'll pass it back to Bylent for more suggestions.
Yeah, signing definitely does help, but again, as I stated earlier, if tenants don't want to read the signs, and it's just going to be really hard to. But you know, you just got to make sure, like you said, they got to be visible and they got to be there somehow. It's got to be like in your face. So what we did, luckily, again in our building, we have a designated room and we have the trash cans right on the wall, so the sign is right in front of you. So your height or my height, I'm not that tall either, but anybody can see that sign because it's right here in front of the garbage can. So that does help. And with the organic bins, then you can put on the lid, because you have to open the lid to put it, you know, the compost inside the bin. But if you see that you have a problem that the lids are staying open, then you can put another sign inside the lid, because that lid can stay open. Or you can put signs on the sides as well. So you should be okay with as many signs. I guess it's not going to hurt. It's just that, you know, you just got to get those people participate. So
Yeah, and that's actually something we looked at when we did the zero waste design guidelines, like where to put the bins. There are some case studies there of different places where people put bins in different buildings, so residential case studies. You can find them on zerowastedesign.org or our Center for Zero Waste Design website. And we like how Bylent has it, where you take all streams to the same location, whether that's the central location, or if you can fit it in your waste room on every floor, make it equally convenient to throw out the food scraps as the trash and recycling. But many buildings are not set up like that. They're set up with a trash chute, a little room that only just has maybe room for a couple of recycling bins, and it's tough. So we have case studies like Stuytown, for example. They have their bins for recycling right by their laundry, and they put the food scrap bin right there, and that worked really well for them. I mean, they even went to the stage where they saw residents were having trouble with the latches, so they took the latches off, replaced them with magnet catches. I mean, there's some building staff doing really innovative stuff. Strivers Gardens is another case study that's both on ours and Jackie's guide, where they allow tenants to drop off their food scrap caddy on the way out the building, and then they empty it and give it to them clean on the way back in. They say it saves them on chute cleanings, and they think it's a good thing. They convince the board that the food scrap separation is a good thing. So, I mean, I think there are ways to set it up that's successful, but just make it convenient for people. And I would say don't worry so much about the smells, because it's no more smelly than trash. I mean, sure, if trash is going to the chute, it's a little more smelly than recycling in a room, but if it's serviced daily and it has a lid, it shouldn't be a problem in my mind. Anybody else want to? Yeah, Jackie, I see you jumping in.
Yeah, what Martin Robertson did at Strivers Gardens, as you pointed out, Claire, and it's I think it's worth underscoring, is he kept some loose newspapers near the bins so that people could drop newspapers in after they made their little dump. And that paper, of course, helps to absorb the smell, absorb the moisture. So from scientific standpoint, it's the moisture that creates the smell. So that's what you want to guard against. So a lot of people don't realize this, but these green bags You know, people think that they're terrific because they're quote unquote compostable, but what differentiates them from a scientific standpoint over any kind of regular bags made out of, you know, polyethylene or what have you, is that they allow the food scraps to breathe. And because they breathe, the moisture gets is not trapped amongst the scraps. So, and also when you think about it, if you're putting your food soiled paper, your paper towels, paper napkins in there with the food scraps, that paper will absorb the moisture too. So, and I also believe that the coffee grounds help to control for odors too. So this is a kind of a well-designed system that really should quell a lot of concerns and trap odors. Another myth is attracting insects. Be cognizant of the fact, folks, that insects, flies, do not find your compost. What happens is the flies arrive on the fruit or with the plant that is dropped into the compost. They don't just kind of find you and descend. So that's how you get the flies, is somebody's actually dropped them in with whatever they've put in. So these myths can be countered, and once people, the important thing is once people get started, they realize, wow, this isn't really as bad as I thought. And I also think it's a very self-reinforcing activity, because once people start to segregate their scraps, they realize how much scraps they actually have. And they're like, wow, this is really better if I can move this into a place where they don't wind up in landfill. And then the other surprise is they realize once they've taken out all the recycling and the scraps, how little garbage they actually have left at the end of the day. And typically that garbage is, you know, composite materials and what have you, that has no smell or anything that's really that, unsavory. So the whole system cleans right up once you start segregating those scraps and doing it the right way.
Yeah, great point, Jackie, and especially because DSMY's collection accepts everything: meat, dairy, bread, cheese. It really means that your garbage doesn't need to smell at all.
Mm-hmm.
And that reminds me, Jackie, your point, something else we usually recommend to people is the repurposing a trash can or two for the food scraps, because you're seeing that you're using less, you have less trash. So some of the people that are worried about having too many cans, maybe, you know, go smaller on the brown bins or whatever you're using for the organics, and then just watch it grow and watch people have less trash. And then as you have empty trash cans, you just start putting stickers on those and, you know, adding them to your
Exactly. You're not generating more trash. You're just separating what's already there. So you don't really need more bins, you know, and I would think in buildings you could repurpose some of the, if you got trash cans, I would think, right?
With enough labels, and if they're small enough, I guess is the other question.
Yeah.
I mean, Patricia here has a specific question for Bylent, which is, has it ever happened that the brown bins are full and residents leave the lids open and they overflow, or they put food scraps in bags on the floor? Has that happened?
Yes, it has.
There you go, Patricia. And then in that case, I guess you took what you brought one of your overflow bins.
Yes, it's either we brought one, and luckily, again, I keep repeating myself, but we have 8 bins, so usually we don't have them all filled. We just get another empty bin, and then just we take some from that bin, and we just because we don't like to fill it up all the way to the top, because we have ran into problems where they're not being picked up because they're too heavy. So we keep them 3/4 full, 3/4 full, so it's easier for the sanitation guys to do it as well. And we don't want to be, we want to help them, because we want our bins to be picked up. And then but it does happen, and sometimes we go and look at it when we start emptying a little bit, there's a whole watermelon in there, or the case there's a flower pot in there that, you know, just you don't need to, just sometimes it's like you just have to look at it, or maybe just shake the can or the bin. Sometimes it's really light because somebody put a flower pot, it's like this tall, and that can be the case, but whatever the case might be, you just got to find a way to try to empty out and make sure you don't attract those rodents or mice or bugs or whatever you have.
Great. Yeah, good point. Patricia's happy you answered that. So I think we're coming close to the end. I'd like to give each panelist in turn kind of a chance to just give some closing thoughts to people before handing back to Brooklyn SWAB to wrap this up. So Sarah, starting with you, maybe a closing thought.
Yeah, just remember that my team is in partnership with Department of Sanitation doing educational outreach. So you can reach out to us at compostoutreach@bigreuse.org or go on to sanitation's website, request a event, and the request will make its way to us. We're looking for high-rise buildings. If you have a community event that you would like us to come and give out stuff and reach a wider group of people, we're here for you, whatever you all need. So feel free to reach out whenever you would like.
Thank you. Jackie, your closing thoughts?
Yes, I just want to underscore a point that was put into the chat by Elizabeth Balkin, who used to be with Department of Sanitation, and I realize you're still in the food waste area. She said people realize edible food can be removed from the compost as food is meant to be eaten. The technical science meant for inedibles. And so I would just like to underscore for everybody is that now that we're focused as a New York society on food waste, it's a great teachable moment to let people underscore that any food that's edible should be eaten by humans or animals. And so this is a great teachable moment for leftovers. So if anybody is realizing that you're starting to put edibles into the compost, divert it further into omelets, fried rice, soups and stews, and other things that are perfect containers for leftovers.
Thank you, Jackie. Yes, so many old-time recipes that use our leftovers need to be brought back. Bylent, any closing thoughts from you?
No, I'm good for now. Thank you so much. And if anybody has any questions for me, I'm available. I'll be more than happy to answer them or help anybody that I can.
Thank you. It was really helpful to get your point of view. And lastly, Michaela, any closing thoughts?
When Jackie mentioned about DSNY, I remember in 2017, DSNY had a poster that said, "Make food, not waste." And it was two carrots together hugging each other. So that was just, really cute of DSNY. But based on my experience, the last thoughts I wanted to share, especially with doing this with my husband, who is not as green as I am, is that it does take time. It does take an adjustment or a process of practice, and make it fun. And we freeze our food scraps sometimes. So that might also work for other people with freezing your food scraps. And that's it for me.
Thank you, panelists. This was great. I think we managed to answer almost every question we got from the audience there, whether it was directly in the chat or in person. And thank you, everybody who's been posting all those resources. This is recorded. This will be shared. I would like to say as a closing point, just think of this as a learning process. Our buildings have been designed to prioritize trash, and if we want New York City to get to zero waste, it is a complex change to separate everything, but the results, if we do that, are so great, not just for the climate, but for the buildings, for the streets, for the cleanliness, for our soils, if it goes to be making compost. So getting everybody together to really see just how positive this can be once you get over the hurdles and you have a smoothly operating system. So thank you, and I'm going to hand it back to Rhonda to close here.
Yes, thank you, Claire. Thanks so much for doing a great job. I want to thank the great panel, and Claire, thank you for your great moderating. And Sherry made the observation to begin with. It's so true. What an amazing panel with so much information. I'm very excited. I think we're going to get a lot of clicks on this also, and you held everybody to the end. But I also want to thank our great, fantastic outreach and events committee, including Sherry, Beth, Liz, Bella, Betty, Michael, Mariana, Ellen, and Mark. And I just want to say, check out the BkSWAB meetings first Monday of every month, and you can go to brooklynswab.org. Thanks everybody so much. Thanks panelists. Good night.